morning. Good to see you. I'm Nicky Campbell. Welcome to the big questions. Derek Bird was authorised to own the shotgun and rifle he used to kill 12 people and injure 11 more. Our first big question this Sunday morning: should Britain ban guns? This campaigner says if we can ban fox hunting, we can ban guns. The World Cup kicks off on Friday. More than 26 billion people, mainly men, are expected to watch it across the globe. Our next big question: has football become more important than religion? England's most capped player, Peter Shilton, says it brings more people together than any faith. And as the Irish ship Rachel Corrie becomes the latest to be prevented by the Israeli army from bringing humanitarian aid to Gaza, our last big question: is Israel acting immorally? We're in Leicester, delighted to be back at Samworth Enterprise Academy with a truly multicultural audience. And sitting on our panel this morning, 4 panellists for you. England's former goalkeeper, Peter Shilton; from Mill Hill Synagogue, Rabbi Yitzhak Shochet; the Leicester Imam, Sheikh Ibrahim Mogra; and from the General Synod of the Church of England, Christina Rees. The United Kingdom may have the tightest gun regulations in Europe, but there are still over 2 million guns in private hands. Now, just 2 such guns caused carnage in Cumbria this week. Should Britain ban guns? Well, Graham Showell, you think that the gun laws in this country are far too strict.
Absolutely. I run the website at the moment that's called Britain Needs Guns, and I actually feel that there's quite a compelling case to relax them. I think if just one other person in Cumbria had been armed, maybe it could have been stopped sooner. We can arm the police, but they weren't there, and he was running around for 3 hours, running people down before they could even find him.
Some people will think this is an extraordinary assertion. You almost seem to be saying that the more guns we have in society, the safer we will be.
Well, actually, research in the US has shown that gun sales have increased a lot over the past 20 years, yet burglary, murder, robbery, all those rates have plummeted.
There was a Harvard study saying the more guns there are in any society, the more homicides there are. But listen,
I will say one thing to that, Nicky.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you can legislate against someone flipping out. In March of this year, a man in China went berserk, attacked his employer, went out and wounded a dozen people, killed 12 people. He did this using a bus.
Yeah.
Should we legislate now against public transport?
Right.
It's impractical. You can't legislate against somebody flipping out.
You can't compare public transport to life. Yeah. And 60 people have died in London alone to gun crime this year. So how can you compare life
how many
to
of
transport?
Those?
Ban all firearms except for to the police and to the troops. All firearms should be banned, and it will happen. Believe me, it will happen. It will happen. All firearms need to be banned. Cumbria was just a wake-up call. Can I finish, please?
In a minute, Lucy, I will come back to you in a second. Let Graham finish his point, because I want to make the point that on your website you say, and it's back to the personal safety point, on your website you say, you asked the question, wouldn't you feel safer with a gun? And you yourself, you would like, currently you cannot because of the law, but you would like to own a handgun. Why?
Well, you can't if you're a law-abiding citizen.
But you would like that law to be overturned.
If you're a criminal, you get a few £100 of illegal drugs money and go down the nearest pub. People like me are defenceless. We're left at the mercy of armed violent
You're not
criminals.
defenceless at all. You said yourself on radio this week you would shoot somebody in the face if they break into your house. Am I correct?
I said that if my life was threatened and somebody entered my property,
you can use reasonable
I would defend
force.
myself.
A firearm is a licence to kill.
Yeah,
A licence to kill. And we need to take that licence to kill away, and we will do it. We will take this licence away to kill. We will ban all firearms in the UK, except for to our troops and to our police force.
Well,
Basque and all the shooting ranges and anybody, farmers, no, it's going to go.
Lucy, just to say, hang on, Graham, just to say, you lost your son.
My son
Damien.
was shot in 2002, but
Well, our apologies for this interruption to the big questions. We hope to return to the debate very soon.
So I went ahead with it, naively not known as about 60, 70 sister guns that go side by side. So I agreed to the ban on the Brocock, not realising there's thousands of them out there. When these bullets are entered into the gun and they hit the victim, there's a point of entry, there is no point of exit. An imitation firearm is a lethal weapon of mass destruction.
Nikki, that's...
Okay, listen, we were off air for about 20 seconds, and apologies to people watching at home, but you want this... It's not your fault.
I don't want... I will get...
Well, again, our apologies for this further interruption to the big questions. We are looking into the fault, and we will return to the debate just as soon as we possibly can.
Technology.
Well, unfortunately, we're not able to return to the big questions at the moment. We're having this intermittent fault, so what we will do is go to some music for the moment until we can return to them. Well, good news, we can now return to Nikki Campbell and the big questions.
Legal or illegal, and then can go and do
So
their
just
job.
to reiterate, no reason to have a gun?
No reason
none.
whatsoever.
Mike Yardley.
Nikki, I think we have to look at this coolly. Obviously, if you've had a member of your family killed with a firearm, it's an awful thing and you're going to have a particular reaction to it. But more than 1 million people in this country use guns, not just for sport. We're very good at sport. We've won international.
Well, again, this is very frustrating, and I'm very sorry about this for the interruption to the big questions, and I've been told we can now return to them, so fingers crossed we will, and it'll be the last time.
The Harry Roberts murders led to the 1968 Act. Hungerford led to the banning of full-bore assault rifles. Dunblane led to the banning, most publicised perhaps, of civilian handguns.
So we need guns in our
And yet,
society.
let me just make this final point. After the Dunblane legislation, we're still seeing handgun homicide, handgun crime. Last year, there were 4,000 handgun crimes, despite that legislation
Hence
began
ban them.
banning
Ban them.
civilian handguns. Our situation is entirely different to the one
There
in
are
America.
so many mixed messages given out. Having a license is giving a message to the grassroots people that it's okay to own a gun. Right? And the thing is, those young people will never be able to apply for a license or get a license, so they are going to carry. So until there is not a total ban and license taken away,
Is this not draconian?
we will never be able
I
to clean the
understand your
streets.
point, but I think what you're suggesting would lead to a police state. Moreover, I think there are other problems. I think there are problems of social alienation. I think there's problems of violence in the media. After Dunblane, I looked at the top 10 rental videos. Lord Cullen was very interested in this. He came back to me and asked me to develop the point. The average video had 13 firearms killings in it. I think that's a terrible thing. And I think a lot of the...
Then it's a different ball game.
Connor,
the streets would be getting
Connor
cleaner
Cunningham.
quicker.
Is this not an absolute draconian knee-jerk reaction when lots of, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have guns?
That's how we legislate. That's why we all fly in different planes. You have to get that boring safety announcement at the beginning. That's for the exception, but that's how we rule. Rules are for that. I was interested to hear about the police state. Who cares? Our police don't have any guns. You know, a police state, it's so strange in a
Our
country.
police do have guns.
You know, only certain sections,
Far
only
more
at
than you
certain
might
times.
imagine.
But the general bobby on the street, I mean, this is our culture, don't actually bear arms. But we expect our citizens to. It seems so strange. And also, regarding farmers, fair enough if they have to use guns. I don't know the technology argument. But why do they have to keep them at home?
Well, firstly, just let's address your point about
lastly,
the police.
the notion about the bus,
Wait, one moment.
that argument that you can use something domestic rather than a rifle to kill someone. That logic is...
But let's just get the facts straight.
Okay, so let's get that one very key point there. Why should these guns, this is what that side of the argument say, Graham Shaw, why should these guns be kept at home?
You have to trust people. You can't You can't turn the country into a big nanny state where
trusting them to
people
kill
are...
Well, then take away breathalyzers then.
Can I say
We're gonna
something to this
trust
lady?
people.
Right?
You have to trust people. It's an interesting point.
I would like to ask this. What makes you think that someone who's willing to commit murder is going to care about a piece of paper that says they cannot own it?
he
Dangerous just proved that. They've just had a massacre. Somebody had a license to hold
And
firearms.
I've just told you about the gentleman in China that used the bus.
Let's see what the audience is.
legislate
Gentleman
against
back
the
there.
breakdown.
Good morning to you.
It's not about the gun, it's about the person who's holding the gun.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
if that person wants to kill...
David Bird was seen to be
Hang on,
okay.
let this gentleman finish and then...
If that person wants to kill someone, he could use a knife. Are we going to ban knives now? How are we going to cut our bread?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have killed 12 people, though.
There's a reason
the
for
thing
a
is,
car,
he
and
could
that is
use
to
a
take
car.
Yeah.
There's a reason for a car. There's no and fire and eliminate. There's no other reason for a gun.
OK,
We need them.
Rubber Shocket and Christina in a minute. Yes, sir. You've had your hand up for a while. Go
I
on.
think it's ridiculous. You sit there and you compare a gun to a bus, a mode of transport. A gun's there and designed to inflict damage to people and to harm people.
From a very early age. But she was faced with mountain lions and rattlesnakes, and the last time I checked, I didn't see many of those in England. I do agree we have some of the most rigorous gun laws, but I think the Prime Minister is right. No knee-jerk reaction, but maybe out of control. 90% of the population own it. It's absolutely appalling. Do you know that there are 10,000 accidental deaths from gunshot wounds alone in the States? If you own a gun, you are 26 more times likely to die from a gun. Guns are not neutral things. I'm sorry.
But what about Rubber Shocket?
The problem
What about people who do target practice or shoot vermin? The law-abiding vast majority.
The reality is that you're always going to have someone who's going to flip out, and if he's not going to have a gun, he will have a machete or something else. I grant you he will not have the ability to then go off and kill 13 people, but it's not a numbers game. He'll still kill 2, 3, maybe more. My big concern is, like everything else, if you ban something, you just essentially force it underground. And someone who's going to have that flip-out moment is going to try and obtain a gun anyway in order to be able to carry out the rampage that he did. I'm not sure banning really is the answer. I think we have to be more innovative in regard to the tighter controls that we have.
And most
and that would include even assessing people annually if necessary, just to see where their state of mind is at, etc., to determine. And if it's necessary, you take it away.
Can I just say something at this point? We've had lots of breaks in our transmission, and apologies at home if it's ruining your enjoyment of this morning's big question. But I think we've sorted it out, so bear with us. Graham, you wanted to come back on that point from Rubber Shocket, or was it Christina's point?
Yeah, well, I was talking more that this lady mentioned about mountain lions, and there are a group of people in society, the elderly, the weak, the disabled, that have no means whatsoever of self-defence.
So you think they should have guns?
Would a gun be of comfort to the 89-year-old woman in Manchester that was raped by a burglar in her own home, in her own bed?
It would have been used against
Let's pick up that point. Wait a minute, everyone.
You should have a panic alarm.
Lady back there, in the back row.
I can't believe what you're saying. Are you real? Are you saying? Are you saying put a gun in a pensioner's hand? And another thing, having a licence doesn't make you more trustworthy than the kid in the street holding the gun. There's no difference.
Nikki, let's...
This man, Derek, but how come he had a licence? Why weren't there updating checks by the medical people and proper communication with the police force about his current mental stability?
There may well have been failures in his case. They've got a right to consider the guns, they've got the right to look at the law and see if it could be improved. In my own opinion, we have very little gun crime in this country. Roughly speaking, about 50 homicides a year. Sometimes it changes, compared to more than 10,000 in the States. I think our system...
So let me ask you the question. Let me ask you... Wait, please. Incidents like this seem to... saw this week. Is that the price we just have to pay for people's freedom?
Or 15 years.
Yes.
If you look to countries like Germany, Finland, Australia, they've had their incidents too. Now, there is the question of the rights.
Is it just inevitable that it will happen
With
when
all-
there are guns?
With legal
On
or
occasion.
illegal weapons. Most expert opinion believes that there's as many illegal weapons in this country as legally owned ones. And finally, let me just make this final point. You must consider the rights of 1 million plus honest people who shoot for sport, who've brought honour to this country in the Olympics and other international competition, and the needs of farmers. You can't poison rabbits. You have to use. You're wrong, Lucy.
There is
You have to
technology.
use
Farmers
firearms
can use
in the country.
darts and
They're
can
tools.
use
Well, you have to use
sedatives.
firearms in the country. Peter
Absolute
Shilton,
rubbish.
we heard that. You have
But
to
you're
use
wrong.
you have to use
Absolute
firearms
rubbish.
in the
Rubbish.
country. You can hear there's a little bit of disagreement.
There's no point in being
Slightly, yes.
Peter.
How are you going to ban guns? Because at the end of the day, it's part. Can I just?
Yeah, go
thank
on.
you. It's part of our life, whether we're using it with our soldiers in the world. Guns are part of the world, whatever reason they're used for, and mostly for obviously the armed forces.
Well, there is an argument.
But obviously
Some people fault Peter for banning them in private hands.
What
private
I'm saying
houses.
is, I mean, obviously, you can't legislate for something that happened the other day. I mean, one person particularly flips, and the stuff that goes on in TV these days, it kind of encourages that sort of behaviour if you're that
absolutely
mentally that way. What I'm saying is, how do you ban the gun? Because even if you get the legislation stricter than what it is now, people in crime, they'll get guns from anywhere.
Okay,
The
how do you
guns
ban it?
will
Let's pick this
appear,
question.
And all right, you may have the legislation, but you're still not going to stop
How do you
somebody
answer
getting
that
a hold
question?
of a gun.
I hear your argument and I understand the devastation in Cumbria, but just before Cumbria, a young black male in Peckham, in the heart of Peckham where I live, where gun crime is rife, was shot in the head.
No.
It was from an Uzi submachine gun.
That wasn't it.
Any firearm, whether it's in your shooting range or in
No,
your
but you must
backyard
get your
or
facts
in your
right.
house,
This is
You know,
very
it should be
everybody who owns a gun.
As long as there's
Tony Greenstein wants to come in here.
The problem with this discussion is that guns don't fire themselves. So in the United States, you have a lot of gun crime. In Norway, which has more guns per head of population, you have very little gun crime.
Why is that?
That's why-
Because the kind of society in Norway is so totally different from the United States. It's a violent society.
Well, we are so sorry about this very persistent fault which is bugging the big questions this morning. Very frustrating for you, we can appreciate, and I can assure you we're doing all we possibly can here to rectify the problem. Thank you for bearing with us.
Rabbi Shockett, we're over here.
I agree with the gentleman because, I mean, if you look at Canada, which is a country just next to the USA, and you see the number of crime committed by those that possess guns is more and more significant than the one in Canada. So, that reinforces the point of culture. It's about culture. It's
You're
not
from
about
Canada, aren't
I'm
you?
from Canada, indeed, and that's very much what you're saying is absolutely correct. The bottom line is, if everyone who owns a gun, and that does mean more resource from the government, would be properly assessed every 6 months, you would have found out that this guy has an issue with the Inland Revenue. You would have found out that this guy has a feud in his family. If you would have assessed him, you would have known, well, maybe now is the time to take the guns away from him for a period of time.
It says on the legislation, intemperate habits. That's the phrase used. And maybe there need to be better lines of communication.
And that has to be thoroughly defined in order to be able to prevent something like this.
One of the practical problems at the moment is there's so much bureaucracy because all the legislation that we've got has been reactive, that the police inquiries officers involved in assessing people don't have enough time to get support. Them and make sure we've got the best legislation we could have, and it could be better.
Graham, last word.
Yeah, my question is to this lady here. She's failed to explain exactly how a gun ban would work. Crime involving firearms has increased as the legislation's been tightened.
Well, I'd be frightened if you had a gun. I'd be frightened of you.
Can you please...
Because you fire it.
Could you
said it
please...
yourself.
And let me finish. Could you please explain to me why Switzerland is so much safer than Mexico?
I'm worried about this country. I
I'm
worry about the
asking
country that I
you
live in.
how to
I
explain
worry about
how
the
a
country
gun
that I
ban
live in.
works.
I'd be scared of you because I've heard you on radio and you said if someone broke into your house, you would shoot to kill.
I would defend myself
You
if my
said
life
shoot
was
to kill.
threatened.
You
But
said
why
shoot
do we
to
have to go
shoot
down
to
that
kill.
route?
In just a second, just give us a brief thought on this.
I think guns should be banned. I think our legislation undergo a re-educating program.
What about people
we
who
need to
shoot for a hobby?
de-glamorize.
What about people who shoot for a hobby?
They should go to the club. Farmers can use. We do not need people to do these things for themselves.
It's well-meaning, but it's
against,
impractical, what
I'm
you're
against the mob rule to suggest that somebody in Cumbria, if they had another firearm, they could have sorted it out. That is mob rule. And we should stop being worried about driving things underground. We seem to be saying every time we legislate something, we'll push things underground. That is what our law enforcing authorities are there for.
Sorry again for the interruptions in the broadcast, but you can, I think you're back with us now. You can join in that debate by logging on to BBC. And you can tell us what you think about all of those debates, the ones we've just had and the one coming up. Now, with the World Cup starting is breaking out across the planet. In England, St George is everywhere, and we're going to see a lot more of that on cars, houses and clothing, and daubed on faces. There's even a website called Wayne Rooney equals God. Has football become more important than religion? Dr. Conor Cunningham, there are parallels, aren't there?
There certainly are parallels. I mean, I think in one sense you could say that football's far more important than religion. Certainly for those who don't go to church and go to football matches. So it's a social activity which is more important for some people than it is for others. And there's certainly, football definitely displays or shows trappings of religion. Mm-hmm. There's the cult of football.
Shrines?
Shrines, cathedrals, Alex Ferguson as Pope, messiahs,
What
Rooney,
about the
Rooney, Messi.
Eternal hope, or is that hope of eternity? Are they different things?
I think they're different things, and this is the danger. Because if football is to be more important than religion, where it's simply a display of an eternal hope, there's a danger because anything could fulfill that. If you think about it, if it's going to replace religion or an alternative to religion, National Socialism was a pretty good alternative to religion. It gave people an eternal hope. It gave people identity. Mm-hmm. It gave people a purpose. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to empty religion or that which would replace it, render it without content, irreducible content. Otherwise, it's complete relativism. And stamp collecting. Well, yes, but in being so, I suppose one could be facetious and say that then when they die, they'll get the ultimate red card. In that sense. And one hears this big narrative in the papers about the decline in church attendance and so forth, but one could be vulgar and reply that, of course, more people still go to church than go to football matches. But everything's declined. Library card ownership, political parties membership, everything's declined. We're apathetic. We sit at home and watch Sky TV. Of course, not BBC. And
so there's a sense of communion in football.
Well, yeah, there's a sense of community, a sense of identity. It's immediate as well. You get to have the victory that day. There's no delayed gratification. Well, I suppose with some teams there are in their position in the league. But largely speaking, it's an immediate thing. You're there with your comrades. You have a sense of purpose. You wear the same uniform, go through the same rituals, and you know who the enemy is.
And Christina Rees, for some people, of course, if their football team loses on a Saturday, it defines...
Devastated.
It's truly devastating.
I mean, Conor's right.
Truly
There are certain similarities and certain analogy to faith and religion. But of course, religion is far more important than football because, this program is called The Big Questions. What football doesn't even pretend to answer are the meaning and purpose of life, why we're here, what's it all about.
Well, you say that. Well, you say that.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true, Nick. And the thing is also true. If faith deals with the absolute questions of why we're here, life, the universe, and everything, football can be absolutely wonderful.
If England wins the World Cup, though, there will be a coming together of people in England, not necessarily all of these islands, but in England, that no religion.
Got cancer on the Tuesday. It's going to
The
fade
end.
away
Yeah.
immediately.
Exactly.
I mean, the big question
what is really
what
important?
What is cancer? What is poverty?
And those are the questions that faith answers. But okay, World Cup fever apart, the largest constituency in this country is members of the Church of England. And more people do go, still, even with dwindling memberships to all organisations,
but we
go
don't
to church.
buy Sky dishes to watch services.
You know what? And I think it's fantastic. And I wish religion could learn from the enthusiasm and bonding that sport can do.
Yeah, lady there, good morning.
There is a very big difference. Good morning. England can and most probably will lose because they seem to have a tradition of losing, but God doesn't. My God.
To society, and I think, I wouldn't say I'm a totally religious person, but I've got faith and I do believe in things, and I think the average person, and obviously if once you get in trouble in your life or something goes wrong, we all say a prayer, don't we? And I think that's a faith that we all have, whether we take it to the degrees of a lot of people do religiously. And the one thing about religion is there's so many different faiths. And there's so many different faiths who have differing views, and those differing views sometimes conflict to the point of creating war to a certain degree.
Same with football, though. Same with football.
Yeah. Can I finish? So, religion is supposed to be for the good of everybody, but in a lot of cases, it's causing more. Not life and death, but it has a big part to play in society. I mean, we've got the World Cup coming up. We've got every country in the world not taking players play. They want to see who's going to win it. But the common denominator is that everybody's pulling together and everybody's interested. Now, on a purely family basis, you've got, for example, I know families who it is more important than religion because they don't really understand religion, but they have got this common denominator. The mother will go and watch it, and father will go and watch the son on a Saturday.
And on that point, what are we missing? What are we missing that gives people this sense of communion in football? Do you understand that? Because you're an FA coach, aren't you? FA referee, and a massive football fan, and a Christian.
I head up Christians in football.
Yeah.
And to me, it's now my two religions combining.
So you acknowledge it is a religion.
Well, before I found faith here in Leicester 40 years ago, sport was my religion. And, that's what I was brought up to be. And I was brought up in a sporting family. And when I found at 18 and when I found Christ really took his rightful place as head of religion in my life. But he didn't put aside my other interests.
The cross came into your life,
The cross came in.
Peter was always brilliant with crosses as well, we have to say that.
Peter's a great sailor, but Jesus probably is better. One thing I want to quote is I read an article by Bobby Charlton, who is one of my heroes, apart from Peter, of course. And he said very recently that we're all here for a purpose. He said, but if football was my own purpose, I'd be sunk. He recognised that football on its own isn't the greatest purpose in life. And I would agree with him. It's part of my purpose. And I love and I immerse myself in football. But when I found Christ, I found that was the main reason for living. And to combine the two together. And I should be supporting England and we'll be rooting for
Football is interest, hobby, and enjoyment, you know, and it can be your livelihood as well. You can't compare the two.
But
and the thing is, I mean, I'm not a football fanatic, my two sons are, but when they're watching, I get into it. I do enjoy that, you know, but it's got to be kept in a certain perspective. But you can't say football can be religion. It is a separate, a separate connotation. When you haven't got football, then, you know, what have you got?
It does stimulate our unity. If we probably remember the remarkable initiative of Nelson Mandela unifying.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop it there because of technical problems. I am so sorry. We're going to have to come off the air, but thank you very much for watching the big questions this morning, and we'll see you very, very soon.
So, as Nikki Campbell said, the technical problems on the big questions this morning make it impossible to continue the programme here on BBC One. Our sincere apologies for spoiling your enjoyment. But now, in its place, here's Escape to the Country.
People, James, does it?
Well, Escape to the Country was shown in place of today's live edition of The Big Questions following the technical problems we experienced during the programme, and our apologies again for not being able to show the full programme. Next on BBC One, a country tracks adventure in the East Riding of Yorkshire.